Do you know the difference between a show host and a TV news anchor? I found that most people don't, and that has big consequences for our democracy. Welcome to Newspeak, I'm Holly Kellum. So if you think you know what an anchor versus a TV host is, here's a little quiz to see how well you know the difference. Get a pen and paper and write down which of the following is an anchor and which of the following is a show host. So number 1 is Sean Hannity versus Bret Baier. Number 2, Fareed Zakaria versus Anderson Cooper. 3, Lester Holt versus Joe Scarborough. 4, Norah O'Donnell versus Stephen Colbert. And 5, David Muir versus Whoopi Goldberg. Okay, so some of those were probably pretty obvious, but maybe some weren't. So what's the difference? Well, the difference between an anchor and a show host is opinion. Not my opinion or your opinion, but their opinion. You see, there's an expectation that TV news anchors are only supposed to present the news without bias or opinion. Now, if you're watching this channel, you probably believe that isn't always or even usually the case these days. And look, I hear you, but TV hosts are the opposite. They are not constrained in that way at all. And in fact, most of them are paid explicitly for their opinions. And when you get into cable news, the two become even murkier. For example, Rachel Maddow discusses the news on her MSNBC show, The Rachel Maddow Show. She may even present the facts in a neutral-seeming way at the top of the show, but her show is not about presenting both sides or multiple sides of an issue and letting the viewer decide. Her show is about giving her perspective on the news. Now, I think there's a place for both in the world. Obviously, you want journalists who are going to expose you to perspectives you don't agree with, but sometimes you want to hear someone's opinion because it helps you make sense of seemingly disjointed facts. Okay, so get out your pen and paper and let's see how many you got right. So number 1, Sean Hannity versus Bret Baier. Sean Hannity is a show host and Bret Baier is a news anchor. Number 2, Fareed Zakaria versus Anderson Cooper. Fareed Zakaria is a show host and Anderson Cooper is a news anchor. 3, Lester Holt versus Joe Scarborough. Lester Holt is a TV news anchor and Joe Scarborough is a show host. 4, Norah O'Donnell versus Stephen Colbert. This one should be pretty easy. Norah O'Donnell is a news anchor, although she will soon be stepping down from that spot on CBS Evening News. And Stephen Colbert is the host of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. He discusses a fair amount of news on his show and can be quite serious.
And last night, in what was to me a very moving Oval Office address, Biden explained his choice to the American people.
But he's also a comedian who gives his opinion on the news.
That humility and self-sacrifice is so beautiful and truly patriotic, and a refreshing change from the last guy.
And last but not least, David Muir versus Whoopi Goldberg. Again, Whoopi Goldberg discusses the news on The View, but as the name of the show implies, she's being paid to give her opinion rather than her neutral reporting skills, which is what David Muir is being paid for. So there you have it. News anchors are not the same as show hosts, and when we can't tell the two apart, we are all in trouble because they're not supposed to be the same. In fact, news companies have been wary of letting their reporters go on shows that could draw out their opinions and make them look biased. Here's Jon Stewart complaining about how hard it is to book journalists on his podcast.
And the crazy thing to me is the journalists themselves think it's insane.
Yeah, they want to do it.
And it shows the fundamental disconnect between the people that are running these organizations and what those organizations are supposedly there for, which is informing the public on the issues of the day.
In 2019, the New York Times made headlines for not letting one of its columnists appear on MSNBC, specifically The Rachel Maddow Show. The Times was worried that by letting its journalists appear on shows that were too ideologically driven, that it could tarnish the credibility of its reporters. Now, if you're watching this show, you're probably saying to yourself that you can read their bias in their writing. Whether they go on Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow's show is irrelevant because you already know what their political bent is. That's because there are many ways to show bias without openly stating your opinion. And in these very polarized times, it seems easier than ever to show your bias because even using certain kind of language can reveal which side you're on. So let me know how you did on the quiz. Put your answers in the comments below. Please share this video with your friends, leave a comment for the algorithm, and subscribe to the channel. Once again, I'm Holly Kellum, and you're watching Newspeak.